This is Max and Mia podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Max and Mia podcast. I'm Max.
And I'm Mia. Thanks for tuning in. We're really glad you're here.
Okay, so something kind of embarrassing happened to me yesterday. A waiter brought my food and said, "Enjoy your meal," and I panicked and said, "You too."
No way. You said that to a waiter?
I did. And the worst part is, I noticed right away, but I just froze. I didn't know what to say next, so I said nothing.
Honestly, that's so relatable. I think we've all had one of those moments where our brain just goes blank.
Exactly. It's not that I didn't know the language, I just didn't know how to handle the awkwardness in the moment.
That's actually a really common thing, even for native speakers. Sometimes it's not about words, it's about confidence.
So, here's a question for you. Have you ever frozen up in a conversation because you didn't know how to react? Tell us about it in the comments. We genuinely want to know.
Yeah, and don't worry, we've all been there too. No judgment at all.
All right, so today's episode is actually about something we all deal with from time to time.
Right, we're talking about problems today. Specifically, how to deal with them and how to actually talk about them when things get a little awkward.
This one's great if you're at an intermediate level, since we'll use a lot of useful expressions for real conversations.
And if you're a bit more of a beginner, don't worry, just take it as a challenge. You'll pick up a ton of new vocabulary.
Let's get into it.
So, let's start with something we've all dealt with at some point. Problems at home. Whether it's with a roommate, a partner, or even family, living with other people is never 100% smooth.
Oh, for sure. I remember living with a roommate who'd leave dishes in the sink for days. Days, Mia. And every time I brought it up, he'd just say, "I'll do it later."
Classic. That's actually a great phrase, by the way. To bring something up. It means to mention a topic, especially one that might be a little uncomfortable. I need to bring something up with you is a really natural way to start a conversation like that.
Right. And it sounds way less aggressive than just saying, "We need to talk," which honestly makes everyone panic a little.
True. Okay, so let's actually act this out. Here's an example of how this conversation could go badly.
All right, I'll be the annoyed roommate. "Seriously? You never do the dishes. I always have to clean up after you. It's so unfair."
Well, maybe if you didn't nag me about it all the time, I'd actually want to help out.
See? That escalated fast. Notice how I used "you never" and "I always"? Those words tend to make the other person defensive right away because it feels like an attack, not a conversation.
And once someone's defensive, they stop listening. They're just thinking about how to defend themselves, so the real issue never gets solved. That little disagreement about dishes can easily turn into something way bigger, like resentment that builds up over weeks.
Exactly. And that's how small things turn into someone holding a grudge. That just means keeping negative feelings towards someone for a long time, even after the situation's technically over.
Okay, now let's try the same situation, but handled well.
"Hey, can I bring something up? I've noticed the dishes have been piling up lately, and it's kind of stressing me out. Could we maybe figure out a system together?"
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't realize it was bothering you that much. Let's set something up, maybe alternate days.
Way better, right? I used "I've noticed" instead of "you never," and I focused on how I felt instead of blaming.
That's the key. Phrases like "I feel like" or "I noticed" keep the focus on the situation, not the person. It gives the other person room to respond without feeling attacked.
And honestly, even the tone matters just as much as the words. You can say the right thing in the wrong tone and it still turns into an argument.
Definitely. So, if you're in a similar situation, try to avoid absolutes like always and never, and instead bring things up early before they turn into something bigger.
Because at the end of the day, a roommate not doing the dishes is such a small thing. But how you handle it can either keep the peace at home or turn into something that affects the whole living situation.
Exactly. Conflict at home is normal. It's gonna happen no matter who you live with. The real difference is in how you choose to deal with it.
Okay, now let's talk about something a little different. And honestly, something people don't really teach you. What do you do when you run into a rude comment or an uncomfortable situation out in public?
Yeah, this is one of those topics that a lot of people avoid because it's just not comfortable to talk about. But it's real life. At some point, you're gonna cross paths with someone who's just not being nice.
Totally. And honestly, the safest move, most of the time, is to just ignore it and keep walking. You don't owe anyone a reaction.
Right, ignoring isn't weakness. It's actually a really smart way to protect your peace. But sometimes you might feel like you need to say something, even something short.
In that case, you don't need a long speech. A short, calm phrase works way better than getting into an argument. Something like, "That's not okay," or "I'd appreciate it if you didn't say that."
Or even something simple like, "Have a good day," said in a flat tone. It kind of shuts the conversation down without giving the other person any fuel to keep going.
That reminds me of something that actually happened to me. I was traveling and a guy made a comment about my accent, kind of mocking the way I pronounced something.
Oh no, what did you do?
Honestly, in the moment, I just froze because I was more focused on finding the right words than actually responding to how I felt. And that's when I realized something important. Sometimes solving a problem in English doesn't just mean knowing what to say. It means solving a problem with English itself. Like, the language barrier becomes part of the problem.
That's such a good point. It's not always about confidence. Sometimes it's literally not having the vocabulary ready in that exact moment.
Exactly. And that's kind of the whole point of practicing this stuff ahead of time. If you already have a few short phrases ready, you don't have to think on the spot when you're already feeling uncomfortable.
So let's give a few more examples. If someone makes an unwanted comment, you could say, "That's none of your business," or "Please keep your comments to yourself."
And if it's more about someone being pushy, like trying to get your attention on the street, a simple "I'm not interested, thanks" usually gets the point across without escalating anything.
The tone really matters here too. You want to sound calm and firm, not aggressive. Firm just means clear and confident without raising your voice or getting emotional.
Right? Because the goal isn't to win an argument with a stranger. It's just to protect your space and move on with your day.
At the end of the day, you can't control how other people act, but you can control how much energy you give it. And most of the time, the best response really is no response at all. All right, let's move on to something a bit more everyday. What do you do when something goes wrong with an order or a service just doesn't meet your expectations?
Oh, this happens all the time. Whether it's a food delivery app messing up your order or going to a restaurant and the food just isn't right, at some point you're going to have to complain about something.
And there's definitely a right way and a wrong way to do it. Complaining doesn't have to mean being rude, actually. The more polite you are, the more likely you are to get a good outcome.
Totally. Let's start with online orders, since that's probably the most common one these days. Say your delivery app sends you the wrong item, or something's missing from your order.
In that case, you could say something like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that my order was missing an item. Could you help me sort this out?" It's calm, it's clear, and it doesn't sound accusatory.
Right. Sort this out is a really useful phrase. It basically means to fix a problem or resolve an issue. You'll hear it a lot in customer service situations.
Another good one is, "I'd like to request a refund," or "Would it be possible to get a replacement?" Using "would it be possible" instead of just demanding something makes a huge difference in tone.
It's funny because I feel like a lot of people, when they're frustrated, just want to vent. Like, "This is ridiculous. I want my money back now." But that usually just puts the other person on the defensive.
Exactly. And remember, whoever's helping you didn't necessarily cause the problem. They're just the person in front of you, so treating them with respect usually gets things resolved faster.
True story, actually. I once ordered food and it showed up an hour late, completely cold. I was frustrated, but I just messaged them saying, "Hey, my order arrived really late and it was cold when it got here. Is there any way you could look into this?"
And what happened?
They apologized and gave me a full refund plus a discount for next time. I really think staying calm made a difference there.
That's the power of tone. Now let's talk about in-person situations, because those can feel a bit more intimidating since you're face-to-face with someone.
Right. Like if you're at a restaurant and your food comes out wrong, you could say, "Excuse me, I think there might have been a mix-up with my order," instead of just saying, "This is wrong."
Mix-up is a nice word for this, by the way. It just means a small mistake or confusion, usually nobody's fault in particular. It softens the whole situation.
And if the issue is bigger, like really bad service, you might say, "I wanted to bring this to your attention before explaining what happened." It sounds professional and it doesn't come off as an attack.
Also, a small tip: starting with something positive can really help. Like, "Everything's been great so far, but I did notice." That way, the person doesn't feel like you're just criticizing them.
That's such a good tip. It's kind of like a cushion before the complaint. It softens the impact.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, most customer service situations get resolved way faster when you stay calm and polite, rather than confrontational. People want to help you when they don't feel attacked.
So next time something goes wrong with an order or a service, remember, you can absolutely speak up. Just do it with a bit of tact.
Okay, let's move on to a place where conflict is basically unavoidable at some point. Work.
Oh, work drama. There's so much material here. Whether it's a disagreement with a coworker, a misunderstanding with your boss, or just tension because of deadlines, it's bound to happen sooner or later.
Right, and one of the most common issues is miscommunication. Someone assumes something got done, another person thought someone else was handling it, and suddenly nothing got finished.
Oh, I've been there. I once assumed a coworker was sending a report to a client, and he assumed I was doing it. We only realized on the day it was due.
What did you do?
Honestly, the first instinct was to panic. and kind of blame each other. But instead, we just sat down and said, let's figure out how this happened so it doesn't happen again, instead of pointing fingers.
Pointing fingers is a great phrase, by the way. It means blaming someone, usually to avoid taking responsibility yourself. And you're right. That almost never helps solve anything. It just creates tension.
Exactly. A better approach is usually to say something like, I think there might have been a miscommunication. Can we clarify who's handling what going forward? It focuses on the solution, not on who's at fault.
That's such an important shift. Another common one is disagreeing with the decision your boss made. That one can feel tricky because there's a power difference involved.
True. You don't want to sound disrespectful, but you also don't want to just stay quiet if you have a real concern.
In that case, something like, I see where you're coming from, but I had a slightly different perspective on this. Do you mind if I share it? Works really well. It shows respect first, then opens the door for your opinion.
I see where you're coming from is a solid phrase, too. It basically means you understand someone's point of view, even if you don't fully agree with it.
Exactly. And that little bit of validation usually makes people more open to actually hearing you out.
Now, let's talk about something that happens a lot, too. Taking credit for someone else's work. That one can get pretty frustrating.
Oh, that's a tough one, because it can feel personal. But reacting emotionally in the moment usually backfires. It's better to address it privately and calmly.
Right. You could say something like, hey, I noticed the report mentioned your name for that section. I actually put a lot of work into it, too. Could we clarify that for next time? It's direct, but it's not aggressive.
And if it keeps happening, that's when you'd want to bring it up with a manager, but always with facts, not emotions. Something like, I wanted to flag a pattern I've noticed sounds way more professional than just complaining.
Flag is useful here, too. It means to point something out so someone's aware of it. You'll hear that a lot in office environments.
Honestly, I think the biggest tip for workplace conflicts in general is separating the person from the problem. You're not attacking your coworker, you're addressing a situation.
Definitely. And staying professional, even when you're frustrated, usually gets you taken more seriously than reacting emotionally.
At the end of the day, conflict at work isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes it actually leads to better communication, as long as it's handled the right way.
Okay, this next one's a bit different, and honestly, a little more personal. We're talking about internal conflicts, like problems with someone close to you, or even just knowing how to express what you're feeling.
Yeah, this one hits different. Because it's not about a stranger or a coworker. It's about people we actually care about. And sometimes that makes it even harder to find the right words.
True. I think a lot of people struggle with this, not because they don't have feelings, but because they don't know how to put them into words, especially in a second language.
Right, and that's such a real thing. You might know exactly how you feel inside, but expressing it out loud in a clear and calm way, that's a completely different skill.
So let's start with expressing feelings. A really useful phrase here is, I've been feeling a bit off lately, which just means you haven't been feeling like yourself, without going into too much detail right away.
That's a nice one because it opens the door to a conversation without forcing you to explain everything immediately.
Exactly. Another good one is, I think we need to talk about something that's been bothering me. It's honest, but it's not aggressive at all.
And I think that's the key here. Honesty without blame. Like saying, I've been feeling a little distant from you lately, instead of, you've been ignoring me.
That shift really matters. The first one shares how you feel. The second one puts the other person on the defensive right away.
Now let's talk about making up with someone, because that's usually the hardest part. Once feelings are out there, you actually have to move forward together.
Right. And making up just means resolving a disagreement and going back to being okay with each other. It's such a common phrase, especially with close friends or family.
I actually remember a situation with a close friend of mine. We had a huge misunderstanding, and neither of us reached out for weeks, mostly out of pride.
What happened?
Eventually, I just texted her saying, I miss talking to you. Can we clear the air? And that phrase alone kind of broke the ice.
Clear the air is such a great expression. It means to talk about a problem so that things feel comfortable and honest again, without any tension left over.
Exactly. And I think the hardest part isn't finding the perfect words, it's actually being willing to be vulnerable enough to say them.
That's so true. Sometimes we avoid these conversations, not because we don't care, but because we're scared of how the other person might react.
And honestly, that fear is normal. But staying silent usually just makes the distance bigger, while a simple, honest conversation can bring things back to where they were, or sometimes even closer.
I think that's the biggest takeaway here. Personal problems don't always need a perfect solution. Sometimes they just need honesty, patience, and the courage to speak up.
Okay, for this last one, let's talk about something that causes way more conflict than people realize: text messages and social media.
Oh, this is huge. So many arguments start because someone read a text the wrong way, or a message just came across differently than it was meant to.
Right. And that makes sense, because when you're texting, you can't hear someone's tone or see their face. A short reply like, fine, can sound totally normal in person, but through text, it can come across as cold or upset.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people tend to read into things too much, which means assuming there's a hidden meaning behind something, even when there isn't one.
That's such a good phrase. Like someone takes a while to reply, and suddenly you're thinking they're mad at you when really, they were just busy.
I've definitely done that. I once sent a long message to a friend and she replied with just, okay. I spent the whole day thinking I'd done something wrong.
And what happened?
Turns out she was just in a meeting and replied quickly without thinking about how it might sound. When we actually talked, she had no idea I'd taken it that way.
That's exactly the problem with texting. It leaves so much room for assumptions. So, if you feel like a message came across wrong, it's usually best to just ask directly instead of assuming the worst.
Right, something like, hey, that came across a little differently than I think you meant it. Can you clarify? Works so much better than staying quiet and getting more upset about it.
And on the other side, if you know a topic's sensitive, sometimes it's better to just call instead of texting. Some things are just easier to say out loud, where tone actually comes through.
That's such a good point. Texting is great for quick things, but when there's an actual problem to solve, a real conversation usually works a lot better.
Definitely. And honestly, I think that applies to everything we've talked about today. Whether it's at home, at work, with strangers, or with people we love, communication is always the actual fix, not avoidance.
Couldn't agree more.
So that's it for today's episode. We talked about problems at home, on the street, with customer service, at work, personally, and even over text.
And if there's one thing we hope you take from all of this, it's that conflict isn't something to be afraid of. It's just part of life, and honestly, part of learning a language too.
Exactly. You're not going to have the perfect words every single time, and that's okay. What matters is that you keep trying, keep practicing, and keep showing up for these conversations, even when they're a little uncomfortable.
Every awkward moment, every mistake, it's all part of getting better, both in English and in how you handle things in general.
So if you learned something today, or if any of these situations felt familiar, let us know down in the comments. We really do read them.
And if you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.
And if you enjoyed this one, drop a like too. It genuinely helps us keep bringing you more content like this.
Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Take care and see you soon.